The missing layer, what the Buddha's original meditation actually teaches. Between what you feel and what you think, there is a layer. It lasts less than a second. It has no words, no story, no opinion, just a raw signal, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, flashing through your nervous system before your mind has time to build anything on top of it. Most people live an entire life without noticing it. Most meditators, even experienced ones, sit for years without being taught to look for it. The Buddha called it vedanā, and he said it's the most important thing you'll ever learn to see, MN 10, because vedanā is the exact place where suffering begins. Not in your circumstances, not in your thoughts, not even in your emotions. In that half-second flash, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, before any of those things have formed. Miss it, and you spend your life reacting to a signal you never knew was there. See it, and something in the machinery of suffering loosens. Here's what most people know as mindfulness. Sit down, close your eyes, follow your breath. When your mind wanders, bring it back. Don't judge. That's real, that works, that's a legitimate starting point. But what if I told you that practice, the one taught in studios and hospitals and apps around the world, is one floor of a 4-story building? A ground floor, a good ground floor, but still, 1 out of 4. 2,500 years ago, the Buddha laid out a complete system. Not a suggestion, not a philosophy, a training manual. He called it Satipatthana, 4 foundations of mindfulness, 4 layers of attention, each one building on the last, each one seeing something the previous one can't reach. The first foundation, body and breath, is what most modern mindfulness teaches. The second foundation, vedanā, that raw feeling tone, is what almost no one teaches. And it's the one the Buddha spent the most time explaining why it matters. MN 10. The third and fourth foundations go further still, into the architecture of your mind states and the patterns that keep the whole system running. In the next 47 minutes, you're going to see the complete building, all 4 floors. You'll understand what each one does, how they connect, and, most importantly, why your practice may have felt like it was missing something. It was. The direct path. Let's start with how the Buddha himself introduced this teaching, because the way he opened this particular talk is unlike anything else in the entire Pali Canon. He didn't begin with a story. He didn't begin with a question from a monk. He began with a declaration, the kind of statement a teacher makes when they want you to understand. This is not one teaching among many. This is the one. This is the direct path for the purification of beings, for the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, for the disappearance of pain and distress, for the attainment of the right method, for the realization of unbinding, namely, the 4 establishings of mindfulness. MN 10. The direct path. In Pali, ekayano mago. That word, ekayano, is worth pausing on. It doesn't mean the only way, as it's sometimes translated. Thanissaro Bhikkhu points to a simile the Buddha uses elsewhere. A lotus pond with multiple entrances, but a single direct road leading to it. MN 12. Ekayano means a path that doesn't fork. You don't take detours. You don't wander through side trails hoping they connect. You walk straight, and the destination? Purification. The end of sorrow. The disappearance, not the management, of pain and distress. Unbinding. That's a large promise. the largest the Buddha made about any single practice. We'll come back to it at the end, because the way he closes this teaching is even more striking than the way he opens it. But first, the system itself. The four-story building picture. A building with 4 floors. The ground floor is your body, physical sensations, posture, breath, the raw material of being alive in a body right now. The second floor is feeling tone, vedanā, that flash of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral that colors every moment of experience before your mind elaborates on it. The third floor is mind states, the overall quality of your awareness right now. Is the mind contracted or expanded? Restless or settled? Clouded or clear? The fourth floor is dhammas, the patterns, the recurring structures, the forces that shape your mental life, hindrances that pull you off course, qualities that keep you steady, and underneath it all, the 4 noble truths operating in real time. Each floor sees something the one below it can't, and each floor is accessible, not through extraordinary talent, but through training. Systematic, repeatable, learnable training. Modern mindfulness, the kind taught in MBSR programs, in meditation apps, in most secular settings, lives almost entirely on the ground floor. Body, breath. Return attention when it wanders. That's not wrong. The Buddha himself said the ground floor is where you start. Breath meditation is the foundation of the entire system. MN 118. But he also said, don't stop there. Sati, what mindfulness actually means. Before we walk through each floor, there's something we need to address, because the word mindfulness, the English translation of sati, has drifted so far from its original meaning that it can actually obscure what the Buddha was teaching. In modern usage, mindfulness usually means something like paying attention to the present moment, non-judgmentally. Just observe. Don't interfere. Let things be as they are. The Buddha's sati is not that. Sati comes from a word that means memory, the act of calling something to mind, not passive observation, active remembrance. You remember your instructions. You remember what you're doing and why. You remember which mental qualities are skillful and which are not, and you act on that knowledge. SN 47.8. Thanissaro Bhikkhu puts it precisely. Right mindfulness is not bare attention. It's a faculty of active memory, adept at calling to mind instructions and intentions useful on the path. Think of a gatekeeper at the entrance of a city, AN 7.63. Not a gatekeeper who stands aside and lets everyone through without judgment. A wise, experienced gatekeeper who knows the faces of the people approaching, who belongs inside, who doesn't, and acts accordingly. That's sati, alert, discerning, remembering. Or think of a cook, SN 47.8. A foolish cook serves the same dish every night and never notices what the king actually enjoys. A wise cook pays attention. What did the king reach for? What did he push aside? And adjusts. The meditator practicing sati is the wise cook, noticing what works, noticing what doesn't, adjusting. This is a crucial distinction, and I want to be careful with it. The modern framing, non-judgmental awareness, is not useless. There's a real insight in learning to observe without immediately reacting. That capacity matters, but the Buddha's version goes further. You don't abandon your powers of judgment. You train them to be less judgmental and more judicious. You learn the difference between reacting out of habit and responding out of understanding. It's judicious, not judgmental. That's the thread running through everything we'll talk about today. Hold it. Foundation 1. Body. The ground floor. Kayanupassana, contemplation of the body, MN10. This is where most people enter meditation, and for good reason. The body is always here. The breath is always happening. You don't need to construct anything or believe anything. You just need to notice what's already occurring. The Buddha begins Foundation 1 with breath meditation, anapanasati, and the instruction is deceptively simple. There is the case where a monk, having gone to the wilderness, to the shade of a tree, or to an empty building, sits down, folding his legs crosswise, holding his body erect, and setting mindfulness to the fore. Always mindful, he breathes in. Mindful, he breathes out. MN 118. Notice, he doesn't say, watch the breath passively. He says mindful, sati, that active quality of keeping the task in mind. And then the training begins. Breathing in long, he discerns. I am breathing in long. Breathing out long, he discerns. I am breathing out long. Breathing in short. Breathing out short. MN 118. Then, and this is where it gets interesting, he trains himself. I will breathe in sensitive to the entire body. He trains himself. I will breathe out calming bodily fabrication. MN 118. Not just watching the breath, training with the breath, becoming sensitive to how breath affects the whole body, learning to calm the body through the breath, deliberately, skillfully. The way a lathe operator works a piece of wood, the Buddha uses exactly this image. MN 10. A skilled turner knows when to apply pressure, when to let the tool glide. The meditator learns the same thing with breath. This is Foundation 1 as the Buddha taught it. Not passive observation of breathing, but an active, skilled engagement with the body through breath. You're not just sitting there, you're learning a craft. Body beyond breath. But breath is only the beginning of Foundation 1. The Buddha goes further, much further, into territory that modern mindfulness rarely touches. 4 postures, MN 10. Walking, standing, sitting, lying down. In each one, you know what the body is doing, not occasionally, continuously. When walking, he discerns, I am walking. When standing, I am standing. This sounds mundane. It is mundane. That's the point. Mindfulness isn't reserved for the cushion. It's woven into every posture of every day. Clear comprehension, MN 10. When you reach for a glass, you know you're reaching. When you look to the side, you know you're looking. The Buddha specifies, when going forward and returning, when looking toward and looking away, when bending and extending his limbs, when carrying his outer cloak, upper robe, and bowl. The level of detail is striking. Every action known. Then the contemplations deepen. 32 parts of the body. MN 10. The Buddha asks the meditator to survey what's actually inside this body, and the image he uses is startling. A sack of grain, open at both ends, filled with different seeds. Rice, mung beans, kidney beans, sesame, husked rice. A farmer pours them out and can identify each type. The meditator does the same. In this body, there are head hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, tendons, bones, bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, membranes, spleen, lungs, large intestines, small intestines, stomach contents, feces, bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, oil, saliva, mucus, fluid in the joints, urine. MN10. This is not poetry. This is not metaphor. This is the Buddha saying, look at what you're actually carrying around. The body you're so attached to. Have you ever really looked at it? And then, the charnel ground contemplations. 9 of them. MN10. A body abandoned in a charnel ground, bloating, discoloring, being consumed, scattered, reduced to bones, to dust. The meditator looks and reflects. This body too is of the same nature. It will become like that. It is not exempt. If you watched our video on death awareness, Maranasati, you've already met this territory. Death contemplation is not separate from mindfulness practice. It lives right here, inside Foundation 1. Body practice includes seeing what the body actually is, and what it will become, not as punishment, not as morbidity, as clear seeing. The anchor. 6 animals. Why does the Buddha spend so much time on the body? Because the body is your anchor. There's a vivid image in the suttas. SN 35.247. Imagine 6 animals, a snake, a crocodile, a bird, a dog, a hyena, and a monkey, each tied to a single strong post with a single rope. Each animal pulls toward its own territory. The snake wants the anthill. The bird wants the sky. The monkey wants the forest. They pull and strain and exhaust themselves. But the post holds. The body, specifically the body attended to with mindfulness, is that post. Your 6 sense bases pull you in 6 directions constantly. Sights pull, sounds pull, thoughts pull. But when you're anchored in the body, in the breath, in physical awareness, you have something solid to return to. The animals can pull all they want. The post holds. This is why Foundation 1 comes first. Not because it's the deepest, because it's the most stable. You need ground beneath your feet before you can look at what's moving through you. So, if you've ever sat and followed your breath, you've been practicing Foundation 1. If you've ever walked slowly across a room, noticing each step, noticing the shift of weight, that's Foundation 1. If you've ever paused and felt the sensation of your hands resting on your knees, the temperature of the air entering your nostrils, Foundation 1. Most meditation teachers stop here. Teach the breath, teach the body, teach returning attention. The Buddha didn't stop here because he noticed something. Between the physical sensation, the breath, the posture, the raw data of the body, and the mind's reaction to that sensation, there is a gap, a tiny gap, less than a second. In that gap, something flashes, a signal, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Before you've thought anything, before you've felt any emotion, before you've told yourself any story. Most meditators sit right on top of this signal for years and never learn to see it. The Buddha called it vedanā. He made it Foundation 2. And he said, in a passage we'll get to shortly, that this is where both chains of suffering converge. Both of them. Individual suffering and the suffering we cause each other. They flow back into one place. DN 15. Feeling. That's where we're going next. Foundation 2. Vedanā. Before we go any further, we need to clear something up. Because the word feeling, the English word most often used to translate vedanā, is going to mislead you if we're not careful. When someone says, "I'm feeling angry," that's not vedanā. When someone says, "I'm feeling anxious about tomorrow," that's not vedanā. When someone says, I feel like this relationship isn't working. That is definitely not vedanā. Those are emotions. Emotions are complex. They involve stories, memories, projections, interpretations, layers of mental construction built on top of something simpler. Vedanā is that simpler thing. The scholar monk Nyanaponika Thera defined it with surgical precision. Feeling is the bare sensation noted as pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. It should not be confused with emotion, which, though arising from the basic feeling, adds likes or dislikes of varying intensity, as well as other thought processes. The Buddha himself drew the line clearly. In the Mahavajjhana Sutta, he distinguishes vedanā from sanya, perception. Vedanā, it feels pleasure, it feels pain, it feels neither pleasure nor pain. Sanya, it perceives blue, it perceives yellow, it perceives red, it perceives white. MN 43. Different aggregates, different functions. Vedanā doesn't identify. Vedanā doesn't interpret. Vedanā does one thing. It tells you the valence, plus, minus, or zero. Your emotions, anger, grief, jealousy, excitement, dread, those are sankharas, fabrications. They are what your mind builds on top of that raw signal. Vedanā is the signal itself, and the reason the Buddha gave it an entire foundation, the reason it gets its own floor in the building, is that vedanā is the place where the building happens, the construction site. If you can see the signal before the building begins, you have a choice you didn't know you had. If you can't see it, you're already living in the building before you realize anyone was pouring concrete. The two arrows. This is where the teaching turns personal, and this is one of the most psychologically precise passages in the entire Pali Canon, the Salatha Sutta, the Discourse on the Arrow. SN 36.6. The Buddha asks, when an uninstructed, ordinary person feels a painful sensation, what happens? They feel the pain. And then, on top of the pain, they feel distress, resistance, aversion. Why is this happening to me? How do I make it stop? What did I do to deserve this? The Buddha's image. Just as if they were to shoot a man with an arrow and right afterward shoot him with another one, so that the man would feel the pain of two arrows. SN 36.6. Two arrows. The first arrow is the painful sensation itself, the physical pain, the unwelcome feeling tone. That arrow, the Buddha says, is unavoidable. You live in a body. Bodies get hurt. Unpleasant feelings arise. That's not optional. The second arrow is what your mind does with it. The resistance, the story, the suffering about the suffering. That arrow, the Buddha says, is optional, but it doesn't stop there. The sutta goes further, and this is the part most people miss. It's not just pain that triggers a second arrow. Each of the three feeling tones has its own trap. When something feels pleasant, the underlying tendency is passion. You lean toward it. You want more. You grip. That gripping is the second arrow of pleasant feeling. When something feels unpleasant, the underlying tendency is resistance. You push away. You flinch. You tighten. That tightening is the second arrow of painful feeling. And when something feels neutral, the underlying tendency is the most dangerous of all: ignorance. You zone out. You stop paying attention. You miss what's actually happening. That drifting is the second arrow of neutral feeling. SN 36.6. Three feeling tones, three traps, 3 second arrows. Not suppressing the first arrow. Not pretending it doesn't hurt or doesn't feel good. or isn't there, feeling it fully, and stopping there. Letting the signal be a signal, not letting it become a chain reaction. The well-instructed disciple, the Buddha says, senses a feeling disjoined from it. SN 36.6. Disjoined. The feeling is here, but the machinery of reaction is not engaged. One arrow felt clearly. The hand that would reach for the second arrow, relaxed, open, still. This is not numbness. This is not detachment in the cold sense. This is the most intimate possible relationship with your own experience. So close to the sensation that you can feel the exact moment where reaction would begin and not go there. Where both chains meet now. Why did the Buddha consider this so important? Why not skip vedanā and go straight to watching mind states, watching patterns? Because of something he said in one of the most philosophically dense suttas in the canon, the Mahanidana Sutta, the Great Discourse on Causation, DN 15. In this sutta, the Buddha traces two chains of suffering. One chain is internal, how craving arises within an individual, how it leads to seeking, to acquisition, to possessiveness, to conflict within yourself. The other chain is social, how craving between people leads to disputes, to accusations, to divisive speech, to lying, to violence. Two chains, one personal, one collective. And the Buddha says something extraordinary. Both chains. These two phenomena, as a duality, flow back into one place at feeling. DN of 15, both of them. The suffering you carry alone in the middle of the night and the suffering nations inflict on each other. Both converge at the same point. Vedanā. That half-second flash of pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. From feeling as a requisite condition comes craving. DN 15. This is the junction point. This is the place in the chain of dependent origination where the path forks toward more suffering or toward freedom. Not at the level of thought, not at the level of belief or ideology or philosophy. At the level of a bare signal so fast, most people never notice it's there. And then the Buddha says something even more striking. He describes what happens when you stop assuming feeling to be self. In as far as one does not assume feeling to be the self, one is not sustained by anything in the world. Unsustained, one is not agitated. Unagitated, one is totally unbound, right within. DN 15. Not sustained, not agitated, unbound. That's the trajectory, and it starts right here at vedanā. The practice, 7 steps. So how do you actually do this? How do you practice Foundation 2? Here's the thing most people don't realize. You don't practice Foundation 2 instead of Foundation 1. You practice it within Foundation 1. The Anapanasati Sutta makes this explicit. MN 118. The 16 steps of breath meditation are organized into 4 groups of 4 tetrads. The first tetrad corresponds to Foundation 1, body and breath. The second tetrad corresponds to Foundation 2, vedanā, steps 5 through 8. He trains himself. I will breathe insensitive to rapture. He trains himself. I will breathe insensitive to pleasure. He trains himself. I will breathe insensitive to mental fabrication. He trains himself. I will breathe in calming mental fabrication. MN 118. Rapture, pleasure, mental fabrication, calming. These are feeling tones. You're already watching the breath. You don't leave the breath. You notice what the breath feels like. and then you notice what your mind does with that feeling. That's foundation 2, arising right inside foundation 1. Thanissaro Bhikkhu is emphatic on this point. A meditator focusing on feelings should not abandon the breath as the basis for concentration. Vedana practice happens while maintaining the breath, not as a separate exercise. So here's a way to approach it, drawn from the suttas and from Thanissaro's synthesis of the practice. Step 1. Establish a comfortable breath. MN 118. Not forced, not strained. Find a rhythm that feels, and this word matters, pleasant. A breath you can sustain. This is not incidental. The Buddha deliberately has you create a niramisa feeling, a pleasure not of the flesh, not dependent on sensory stimulation, as the base of your practice. You're not starting from neutral. You're starting from a wholesome, pleasant feeling that you yourself have generated through skill, through craft. Step 2. Once you're settled, add one question, just one. Is this moment pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? That's it. Don't analyze. Don't explain. Just notice the tone. Step 3. Watch what the mind does next. Does it lean toward the pleasant? Does it flinch from the unpleasant? Does it drift during neutral? Watch the movement, the tendency, the reaching or the pulling away or the fading out. Don't stop it. See it. Step 4. Begin to separate the feeling tone from the body. MN 10. There's pain in the knee. That's a body sensation. The unpleasantness of the pain, that's vedana. They feel like one thing. They are two. The body is elements: earth, water, fire, wind. The feeling tone is something the mind adds. Begin to see the seam between them. Step 5. Separate the feeling tone from awareness itself. Awareness is aware. Feeling tones are not aware. They arise in awareness. They are known by awareness, but they are not the knowing itself. This is a subtle distinction. Don't force it. Let it clarify over time. Step 6. Notice. Is this feeling of the flesh, samisa, or not of the flesh, niramisa? MN 10. Pleasant because of something external, a comfortable temperature, a satisfying meal, a flattering thought, or pleasant because of concentration, because of inner stillness, because of something that doesn't depend on the world cooperating? The Buddha distinguishes 6 types of feeling, 3 tones, each in 2 flavors. This distinction matters because niramisa feelings, the pleasure of jhana, the equanimity of deep concentration, are allies on the path, not obstacles. Step 7. See what's true of all feeling tones, regardless of type. They are fabricated. They arise from conditions. They are impermanent. MN 10. The refrain that repeats after every exercise in the sutta. One remains focused on feelings in and of themselves, ardent, alert, mindful, subduing greed and distress with reference to the world. Then, observing origination, observing passing away, seeing that feelings arise dependent on contact, SN 47.42. And when contact changes, feelings change. Nothing you need to hold, nothing you need to push away, signals, arising and passing. Known, that's 7 steps, but tonight you only need 1. When you sit, or lie down, or walk, whatever your posture, after you've settled into the breath, after the body has quieted, add 1 question to your practice. Is this moment pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? Don't answer with your head. Answer with your body. Answer with that layer between sensation and thought, that half-second flash we've been talking about. You might be surprised. A moment you assumed was neutral might carry a faint hum of pleasantness. A moment you thought was fine might have an edge of unpleasant you've been ignoring for years. That's vedanā, that's foundation 2, the layer between what you feel and what you think. You've been sitting on top of it every time you've meditated. Now, look down. Foundation 3, mind states. Foundation 1, the body, is solid. You can feel it. The weight of your hands, the rhythm of breath, the pressure of the chair beneath you. It's always there. Foundation 2, vedanā, is fast. A flash. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, gone before you can name it, already replaced by the next one. Foundation 3 is something different. It's not a single signal. It's the atmosphere. Cittanupassana, contemplation of mind states, MN10. If vedanā is the weather report, sunny, cloudy, cold, then citta is the climate. Not what's happening right now in this one moment, but what the whole sky looks like when you step back and take it in. You know the difference. You've felt it. There are times when you sit down and the mind is tight, contracted, small. Not because of any one thought, but because the entire field of awareness has narrowed. And there are times when the mind feels wide open, spacious. Not because anything wonderful happened, but because something in the quality of awareness itself has shifted. That's what Foundation 3 asks you to notice. The 8 pairs. The Buddha's map of mind states is organized into 8 pairs. Simple, binary, like a series of switches. Each one either on or off. MN10, with passion or without passion, with aversion or without aversion, with delusion or without delusion. These first 3 are the roots, the 3 unwholesome roots, raga, dosa, moha, and their absence. Not subtle, not hidden. When the mind is colored by lust, you know it. When it's colored by irritation, you know it. When it's foggy, confused, not quite seeing straight, you know it. Foundation 3 asks you to acknowledge that knowing, not to fix it, not yet, to know it. Then the pairs become more subtle, contracted or scattered. MN10. A contracted mind is one that is pulled inward. Sloth, heaviness, withdrawal. A scattered mind is one that has flung itself outward. Restlessness, proliferation, chasing. 2 opposite problems, both recognizable, if you look, enlarged or not enlarged. A mind that is expanded beyond its usual range, through concentration, through insight, through a moment of genuine openness, or a mind that hasn't. You know the difference. There are sits where something opens, and sits where nothing does. Concentrated or not concentrated, settled, gathered, unified, or fragmented, pulled in multiple directions, released or not released. MN10. This is the most advanced pair. A mind that has, even temporarily, let go of something it was holding, or a mind still gripping, still sustained by something, still leaning. 8 pairs, 16 possible states, and the instruction for all of them is identical. Know. Notice, not fix. This is where Foundation 3 can feel strange, especially if you come from a therapeutic or self-improvement background. Because the Buddha does not say, when you notice a mind with passion, remove the passion. He does not say, when you notice a contracted mind, expand it. He does not say, when you notice a scattered mind, fix it. He says, when the mind has passion, one discerns that the mind has passion. When the mind is without passion, one discerns that the mind is without passion. MN10, discerns, knows, sees clearly. There's a reason for this, and it goes back to the nature of sati, that active, judicious quality we talked about at the beginning. When you try to fix a mind state before you've fully seen it, you're working blind. You're reacting to the mind state, which means you've been captured by it. The aversion to aversion is still aversion. The restlessness about restlessness is still restlessness. You've shot the second arrow, but when you simply know this mind has aversion, something shifts. You are no longer fully inside the aversion. You are the one seeing it. The aversion is still there, but you are no longer identical to it. This is not suppression. This is not passivity. This is the foundation for everything that comes next. Because once you can clearly see what the mind is doing, once you know whether it's contracted or scattered, concentrated or fragmented, gripped or released, then you can respond skillfully. Then the cook can adjust the recipe. Then the gatekeeper can decide who enters. But the seeing comes first, always. Notice, not judge. Know, not fix. How Foundation 3 arises. Here's something practical and encouraging. Foundation 3 is not a separate exercise you add to your practice. It arises naturally when Foundation 1 is well established, when the breath is settled, when the body is at ease, when you're no longer fighting to stay present, when presence has become the default rather than the effort. The mind quiets enough to see itself. It's like a glass of muddy water. Foundation 1 is setting the glass down. You stop stirring. You stop shaking it. You let the body be still. And as the sediment settles, the water clears, and you can see through it. What you see through it is the mind's own state, its color, its quality, its weather. You don't need to go looking for mind states. You don't need to interrogate yourself. Am I contracted? Am I scattered? Let me check. That would be more stirring, more agitation. You settle. You breathe. You notice vedanā, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. And then, at some point, you realize you can also feel the tone of the whole mind, not one signal, the whole room. Is it tight in here or open? Is there energy or heaviness? Is the mind reaching for something or resting? These aren't analytical questions. They're the kind of knowing that happens when you've been quiet long enough to hear the hum of the room. Foundation 3, in practice, sounds like this. You're sitting. The breath is steady. You've noticed a pleasant feeling tone. Foundation 2. And then, without effort, you become aware of something larger. The mind feels settled, gathered, clear. You know it. You don't congratulate yourself. You don't grip it. You know, concentrated mind, or you're sitting. The breath is there, but the mind keeps sliding off. Thoughts proliferating, planning, rehearsing, replaying. You notice the unpleasant edge, Foundation 2, and then you feel the larger quality, scattered mind. You know it. You don't berate yourself. You don't force concentration. You know, scattered mind. And in that knowing, already, something has changed. Because the scattered mind that knows it is scattered is no longer entirely scattered. Part of it has returned. Part of it is here, seeing clearly. That's Foundation 3, the mind knowing itself. 3 floors seen, body, feeling tone, mind state. But there's a 4th floor, and it's the one that holds the whole building together. The patterns beneath the patterns. The forces that make the mind do what it does, again and again, until you learn to see them. The Buddha called them dhammas, and among them, 5 that pull you off course, 7 that keep you steady, and 4 truths operating in real time underneath everything you've ever experienced. Foundation 4. Dhammas. The first 3 foundations look at what is happening. Body. What is the body doing? Vedana. What is the feeling tone? Citta. What is the mind's overall state? Foundation 4 asks a different question. Why does it keep happening? Dhammanupassana. Contemplation of dhammas. Mental qualities. Patterns. Principles. If Foundation 3 is the weather, Foundation 4 is the climate system, the pressure fronts, the ocean currents, the forces that determine why Tuesday is cloudy and Thursday is clear, not randomly, but because of conditions you can learn to read. The Buddha organizes Foundation 4 into 5 sections. We won't walk through all of them exhaustively. This is a floor you'll want to explore on your own, room by room, over years. But 2 sections matter most for understanding how the whole building works. 5 hindrances. What pulls you off? The first section, the 5 hindrances. Vedanā, N10, sensual desire, the mind reaching toward pleasant experience, wanting more, leaning forward. Ill will, the mind pushing against unpleasant experience, wanting it gone, tightening. Sloth and torpor, the mind sinking, heavy, losing clarity. Restlessness and anxiety, the mind spinning, unsettled, unable to land. Doubt, the mind hesitating, unable to commit, circling without resolution. 5 forces, and if you've practiced even a little, you recognize all of them. They're not exotic. They're Tuesday afternoon. But here's what makes Foundation 4 different from simply noticing these states. The Buddha doesn't just say, "No, there is sensual desire." He says, he discerns how there comes to be the arising of unarisen sensual desire, and he discerns how there comes to be the abandoning of arisen sensual desire, and he discerns how there comes to be the non-arising of abandoned sensual desire in the future. MN10. 3 layers. How does it arise? How does it get abandoned? How do you prevent it from returning? This is not passive observation. This is investigation. This is the cook studying the recipe. Not just tasting the soup, but understanding why it tastes the way it does, what went in, and how to adjust it next time. And notice, this connects directly back to Foundation 2. Sensual desire arises because a pleasant vedana triggered the passion tendency. Ill will arises because an unpleasant vedana triggered the resistance tendency. Sloth and torpor arise when neutral vedana triggers the ignorance tendency and the mind checks out. The hindrances are what happens when the second arrow flies. Foundation 4 sees the pattern. Foundation 2 sees the trigger point. The building is one system. 7 awakening factors. What keeps you steady? The second section, and this is the counterweight to the hindrances, is the 7 factors of awakening. Bojjhanga, MN10, mindfulness, investigation of dhammas, persistence, rapture, serenity, concentration, equanimity, 7 qualities. And the same 3-layer instruction applies. How does it arise? How is it developed? How is it brought to culmination? MN10. But here's the practical key. The thing that turns this list from a catalog into a tool. The 7 factors divide into 2 groups. 3 are energizing, investigation, persistence, rapture. They bring heat. They wake you up. 3 are calming, serenity, concentration, equanimity. They cool you down. they settle you. And mindfulness is always appropriate. It's the seventh factor that doesn't belong to either group because it's needed in every situation. SN 46.53. The skill, the craft, is knowing which group to activate. Mind sluggish, sloth creeping in? You need the energizing factors. Investigation, look more closely. Persistence, re-engage. Rapture, let interest arise. Mind restless, spinning? You need the calming factors. Serenity, soften. Concentration, gather. Equanimity, let go of the need to control. This is the cook with the spice shelf. You're not stuck with one flavor. You've got options, and you learn through practice, through Foundation 2's feedback, through Foundation 3's clear seeing, which spice the moment needs. The Four Noble Truths in real time. The final section of Foundation 4, and the deepest, is the Four Noble Truths. Men 10, not as doctrine, not as something you believe, as something you investigate in real time. Is there suffering here? Right now, in this moment of experience, is there dukkha? What's feeding it? What craving? What clinging? What assumption is sustaining this particular knot of suffering? Can it stop? Is there a moment, even a brief one, where the feeding stops and the suffering releases? What did I do or stop doing that allowed that release? This is satipatthana at its most powerful. The Four Noble Truths are not a theory you accept. They are a diagnostic framework you apply. Breath by breath, moment by moment, to your own direct experience. And when you apply them, you're standing on all four foundations at once. The body is your anchor. Vedana tells you where the craving begins. Mind state tells you the quality of your awareness. And here, at Foundation 4, you see the whole pattern, the arising, the feeding, the possibility of cessation, the path, the complete building, all four floors, one system. Close between what you feel and what you think, that layer. At the beginning of this talk, I said most meditators never learn about it. Now you know what it is. Vedanā, that raw flash, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, before the story begins, before the emotion forms, before the second arrow leaves the bow. You know where it lives in the system. Foundation 2, between the body you inhabit and the mind states you carry. You know why it matters. Because both chains of human suffering, the personal and the collective, converge at that single point, DN 15. And you know what to do with it, not suppress it, not analyze it, not turn it into another self-improvement project. Notice it, know it, discern it. With the quality the Buddha actually asked for, not passive, not judgmental, but judicious. A wise gatekeeper who knows what's arriving. A good cook who knows what the moment needs. AN 7.63. SN 47.8. Judicious, not judgmental. That's what sati, real sati, the Buddha's sati, has been all along. The bridge. Breath is satipatthana. And here's the thing I want to make sure is clear before we finish, because this might be the most important practical point in the entire talk. You do not need 4 separate practices. You need one. The Anapanasati Sutta, the Buddha's most detailed meditation instruction, maps 16 steps of breath meditation onto the 4 foundations. MN 118. Steps 1 through 4, body. Steps 5 through 8, vedanā. Steps 9 through 12, mind states. Steps 13 through 16, dhammas. Breath meditation is satipatthana, not a preparation for it, not a preliminary. The whole system, all 4 foundations, unfolds within a single practice of sitting with the breath. When the Buddha was asked what single practice develops all 4 foundations of mindfulness, he pointed here. MN 118. To the breath. The thing you've been doing, perhaps for years. The thing that felt sometimes like it should be leading somewhere deeper. It was. You just needed the map for the other 3 floors. 7 days. Which brings us back to how the Buddha closed this teaching. Because the opening was extraordinary. This is the direct path, but the closing is something else entirely. If anyone would develop these 4 establishings of mindfulness in this way for 7 years, let alone 7 years, 7 months, let alone 7 months, 7 days, one of 2 fruits can be expected for him. Either gnosis right here and now, or, if there is a remnant of clinging, non-return, MN 10. 7 days. The Buddha did not say this about any other practice, not about generosity, not about virtue, not about any single meditation technique, only here. Only about satipatthana practiced with all 4 foundations, with ardency, with alertness, with that active, judicious mindfulness he described. 7 days, and one of 2 fruits, full awakening or the stage just before it. That's not a gentle suggestion, that's a guarantee. The strongest the Buddha ever made. Now, does that mean you sit for 7 days and become an arahant? Probably not. The "in this way" carries a lot of weight. The Buddha is describing a quality and completeness of practice that most of us are still growing toward. But the direction is clear, the path is clear, and it doesn't fork. Most people who meditate are practicing 1/4 of what the Buddha designed. That's not wrong. Foundation 1, body and breath, is where the path starts. It's real practice. It's the post the 6 animals are tied to. It's the ground beneath your feet, but it's the ground floor. And there are 3 more. Tonight, if you sit, if you walk, if you lie down and practice, try adding 1 question, just 1. After the breath has settled, after the body is at ease. Is this moment pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? Don't answer with your thinking mind. Answer with that layer, the one that's been there all along, between every sensation and every reaction, running beneath every moment of your life. That 1 question is foundation 2. And foundation 2 changes everything, because it's the place where you stop shooting the second arrow. The acrobat in the sutta told his assistant, a young girl balanced on a pole named Frying Pan, "You watch after yourself, I'll watch after myself." The Buddha said she was right. When watching after yourself, you watch after others. When watching after others, you watch after yourself. SN 47.19. The direct path. Not the only path, the one that doesn't fork. It begins with the breath you are taking right now.